Hey, and welcome to another After Effects tutorial. So today I'm going to talk about how to do some text reveals inside of After Effects. So you can do this several different ways. A lot of people can you can just do like a mask, kind of fading some text out, or using various effects and presets, or as well as like maybe a track matte. So we're going to go through a couple of those on how to do those reveals and make a nice looking project versus just like fading up the opacity, which is pretty boring. So I'm going to go ahead and start just making just a text layer. And we'll call this text reveal. Change our font to something like a Trade Gothic or something like that. Do all caps. We'll shrink this down a little bit, bump up our size, and we'll change our color. Okay, so now we have our text. I'm just going to throw this right here. So my personal preference is to have my text just stay in its own composition without anything really on it. That way you can easily get back and change it out. So we're just going to call this is comp 1 right now. We're going to click over here. I'm going to hit enter and we're going to call this just text. Okay. So then I'm going to take this composition and I'm going to drop it into another composition. So I'm just going to click and drag and I'm going to drop it right on top of this same little button right here. And that's basically just going to nest it inside of a new composition. Okay, so this isn't like an editable file. The only way you can get into that is to double click and you're going to go back into our text layer that we can edit there. All right, so now we have our text number 2. So we'll call this text reveal. And I'm just clicking on that composition up here and hitting enter to change the text. So we'll hit enter there. And so now we have text reveal. So, a few different ways to do it would be, hitting T on the keyboard and you have your fade in, fade out, which is pretty boring as far as having a text reveal. So you could set some keyframes. So here's one which is at 100%, and then we'll drop this down to 0%, and I'll just hit spacebar and you'll see it just fade in. So that's pretty boring. Sometimes it's necessary, but we'll just do something a little bit more interesting. So another way is to maybe draw a mask around your text and do a reveal that way. So I'll just show you how to do that real quick. I'm going to put a circle mask on this text. In order to do that, I'm going to click on the layer that I want to do that to, and then I'm going to go up here to my shape tool. I'm going to click and hold that down to get my ellipse tool, and there we go. And I'm just going to draw a box, or draw a circle around our text here, and click off of that. So now we have a lot of space on the outside, and so if this text was outside of the circle, it would be cut off. So for instance, if I double click on my mask and move it here, it's just like a mask on top of my text. So we'll keep it right there for now, and I want to soften that up a good bit. So I'm going to hit M on the keyboard a couple of times to bring up my mask properties. And from here, I'm going to feather this mask a whole lot. All it depends on how soft you want it. So let's go to like 500. And nothing really happened until I move this around. So now if I move my mask around, it's going to be really soft and kind of reveal it that way. So in order to have it actually reveal, we need to animate this mask. So we do that with the mask path. So again, you can click this little stopwatch and lock in your main position. So this is kind of our second position right there. So we'll maybe put this at 5 seconds, and then I'm going to take my playhead. I'm going to scoot it down here. So you can do this one of two ways. You can move the entire mask at one time, or you can move like 1 point at a time. So if I click and drag this up, I'm going to get this top to bottom reveal. And you can see it's super soft, and so you're going to get that extra reveal there. You may have to move some of these pieces here. If you don't like that, then you can maybe decrease that softness of your mask. But again, you can move this all out of the way. Oops. Just clicking those points and move those up that way. If you wanted to move the whole thing, let me just undo all that. So if I wanted just to move this whole thing, I really double click my mask on the side, and it sort of puts this bounding box around our mask, and I can just click and drag it out. So maybe it reveals sort of left to right, something like that, and it's completely gone. And so now if I hit spacebar and play that back, it slowly fades that text on right there. You can see it slowly fade on. And you can just move your keyframes if you want to go a little bit faster. Scoot that down. If I hit play now, it's just a little bit faster reveal. All right, so that's a pretty simple way to do those text reveals. So I'm just going to delete this for now. We'll delete our mask. And now we're back to just our plain pre-comped text layer. And there are other ways to go in and animate your text. You could go to your main text layer, and with that selected, hit U on the keyboard a few times, and you'll get this little animate option. You can click here and go through a few of these things. These are not really user-friendly, in my opinion. I struggle with them all the time. I use opacity a few times, but you can play around with these and they will affect, each character and things like that. But for the most part, I don't really mess with these a ton. I'll show you one way. If I click on opacity, and this is the one I use somewhat often because it's the one I know, but if I click on the opacity, I'm gonna go ahead and drop that all the way to 0. And so now I have this range selector section here. And if I click on that little drop down menu, you have a start and end. So if I reduce my end percentage, you can see it kind of revealing on that way like that. So let's put this all the way at 100 and I want it to sort of type on, I guess, like that. And so I would just need to keyframe my end point. So I'm going to click on the stopwatch. Actually, I want this one to be at the very beginning. So let's drag this back down here. So there's my 0%, and then I'll bump this all the way up to 100, hit spacebar. You can see it just sort of does one letter at a time. Let's make that a little bit faster. Okay. You can go into the advanced properties here and you can change a few things. Again, I don't really mess with a lot of these. They just aren't really really intuitive for me, at least. So you can change your softness to make it very rigid, kind of like typing on there. We'll bump that back up to 100. One thing I do change sometimes is I'll do the randomize order, which is right here, and turn that on. So now it just does sort of a random thing there. So you can maybe kind of have them flicker or something like it's a neon sign coming on. But that's one way to do it. Again, this is inside of that text layer, so I like to keep this sort of separate so I can easily jump back and forth. So I'm just going to click on this animator one and delete it, and now I'm back to the normal thing. So let's go back to text reveal. So inside of here, let's talk about how to do it with a gradient wipe. And so this is like a transition effect you can add to a layer. So I'm going to click on the text layer. I'm going to go up to effect, and we're going to go down to maybe transition. Let's see. Yep. And we're going to go to gradient wipe. Click on that, and it's going to give you this little option up here. And this is the effect that's applied to this pre-comp. And so now you can tell it what do you want to use as your gradient layer, how fast do you want it to transition, and how kind of soften it up a little bit. So this is where you're going to want to use probably some other video layer I would recommend. So we could probably use a picture layer, but a video may give you a little bit more interesting effect. So I'm going to go back to project, and we're going to import some sort of video file. And you're going to want something that has some sort of contrast. So I'm going to do Command I, and we're going to import a file. So for this one, let's see. Let's maybe use this flowing water layer here. Let's click on number 7. Let's see what this looks like. And so this is, I'm going to drop this down here. We'll take a look at what we're looking at here. So what it's going to do is the gradient wipe is going to basically pull the light and dark values of your image or your video and use that as a transition. So you definitely need to add it to your timeline. So just drag it on down here, and you can really put this wherever. It can be on the top, it can be on the bottom. It doesn't really matter. We can go and actually turn that off. And now we want to go back to our text layer, and we want to tell the gradient wipe what to use. So I'm going to go back to the effects control tab here, and we're back on our gradient wipe. And so now we have to tell it, hey, use what the gradient layer I want you to use is not this text layer, because that's what we're looking at, but I want it to actually use this Water 7 MP4. So I'm going to click on number 1, go down to Water 7 MP4. And so now if I take the little blue number here by the transition completion and bump it up, it's going to start revealing or sort of taking that text away. Okay, so that's looking pretty cool. It's kind of a grungy, it distorts it a little bit. And now you can actually soften it up as well with the transition softness, and it'll make it a little bit more not so rigid, and it sort of dissolves it away like that. And I think it'll actually follow along with the video. So let's do a little experiment here. Let's set a keyframe for completion at 0, and we'll go to 5, and we'll bump this up to right when it goes away, which is about 30%. And let's hit play and see. Yeah, so you can see it's actually using the motion of that video. So it's following along sort of frame by frame on that text layer. So yeah, you can imagine that with a photo, it's just going to use the light and dark values that are on that photo. But here it's, it's playing out, which is pretty cool. So that's a way to do it. If you don't really like, that video wipe, you could just right click on your water 7 here, replace this with maybe something different. So let's go back and let's do a glowing blur. This is kind of a softer option. So we'll click on this, and this is a, let me double click so you can see what we're looking at. Just sort of a random motion background here doing its thing. And so if I go back to text, oh sorry, text reveal, and it's already replaced it. So once I did that replace file, it just replaced it right there. And so it just updated that file. So now if we hit play, let's see what happens. All right, so not a whole lot happens here. We probably need to maybe up our values a little bit. So let's go back here. I'm gonna hit U on the keyboard so those keyframes are there. And let's bump up our completion all the way. There it goes. So that's such a softer image that it takes a little bit more for it to dissolve away. Yeah, so it's, it's gonna have a few different effects based on the video that you choose. But that's a cool way to do it. So it'd be great. You could do that with maybe like an ink bleed or something. Yeah, feel free to try that out. So the next thing we're going to do is using a track matte, which is really essentially kind of the same thing, but I'll show you how that works. So I'm going to delete this, and we're going to delete this. I have one that I use a good bit that I made a long time ago. And so let me pull that in, and I'll show you what it is and how I made it. All right, so it's this grunge reveal left to right. So I'm gonna double click and show you what this is. So it's sort of this almost like a stop motion animation of just a bunch of grunge layers piling on top of each other. So the way I made that was actually inside of Photoshop. Let me go into Photoshop and I'll show you how I made that. I'll make a new composition, pretty much the same composition size as my other, as my main project, 1920 by 1080. And we'll hit create. And from here I would just start making layers. So I'm just gonna make a new layer. And now I would add some grunge, textures to this one layer. So I'm gonna hit B on the keyboard for my brush tool, and I'm gonna right click to get my brush panel here. And you would wanna import your own brushes. I'm not really gonna go through how to use Photoshop brushes necessarily. And this would just show you the overall concept. So in order to do this, I had tons and tons of brushes, but for some reason my computer just completely got rid of them and I have no idea where they went. That's the life of having a PC, I guess. But I have a few here I can just show you and how it all works. So I'm just going to click on this like ink bleed thing here, and I'm going to click right here to get some stuff there. And I can even maybe rotate my brush. Again, I'm just right clicking there, do something like that. Okay, so at this point I would save this as basically frame one. So I would make sure I want to label these a certain way. So I'll just save as, and we'll call this grunge 1 or something like that, JPEG. Okay, this is just going to go to a folder, and I would save it and then hit OK. And then I would do another layer. So maybe it would get a different brush here, and I'd want to rotate that as well and start slowly adding as it goes. So maybe rotate it again, and it would just slowly work your way across this whole document, making different frames, adding a little bit more each time, and making sure you save those in some sort of progression. So this one would be, grunge _2, grunge _3, and so on. So once you do that, I would go make sure you can just save all those into the same folder. Then I would go back to After Effects and I can import that. I don't really have an example necessarily here, but if you find that sequence that you just exported all in your folder, it would recognize that as an image sequence. So it would take that grunge 1 all the way to grunge, let's say 20, and it would piece them together as like a video file. You may need to tell it like, hey, this is a JPEG sequence right here. If you're a PC user, most of the times it'll just recognize that as a sequence. So import that, and you would have a video file that looks much like this. Okay, and you can maybe speed that up or down, or however you want to do it, using a time remap option. But that's basically how you'd make sort of your own grunge reveal, or any sort of reveal for that matter. So let's throw this in and talk about how to make this an actual text reveal. So this again just has black and white values. I'm gonna drag this down here, and this is where I'm gonna want this on top of my layer. Okay, so I'm gonna zoom in so we can see what we're working with down here. And if I move my playhead down, you can see there it's sort of revealing. So what it's going to do in this scenario is it's going to wipe from right to left the text off. So everything that is white will be visible and everything that is black will be disappearing. So in order to make that happen, you need to go over here to where it says track matte. Now, if you don't see this, you can there's maybe a button down here that says toggle modes and switches. You can click on that, or you can right click on your little menu bar here, go to columns and select what you want to look at. But what you want is the track matte. And so the order of layers is that you want your the matte that's going to be sort of revealing your text to be on top, and you want the thing that is going to be revealed, which is our text, we want to see it, is going to be on bottom. And so now we want to go and click on the track matte, and in this case we want to do Luma matte, and this is where it's going to toggle from right to left, and it's going to wipe that text out. So you can see right there, it's sort of dissolving right there. Okay, pretty cool. So let's say we wanted to go the opposite way. So what I would want to do is maybe go to Luma matte and do Luma matte inverted. And so now it's going to be backwards like that. So let's say, well, I don't want it to go from right to left. I don't want it to go from left to right. And so the only thing I really want to do there is just take my footage. I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to transform, and I'm going to flip it horizontally. And so now it should go from left to right. There we go. So let's say I wanted it to reveal on and then reveal off. So what I want to do is have it maybe reveal on like that. And so right about this area here is where that text is fully revealed. And so from right there, I want to set a keyframe. And to do that, I'm just going to click on our little diamond over here, because it already, once you add the time remap, it already sets those keyframes for you. If I were to move this keyframe way up, it's going to make that reveal go really, really fast. But this is basically set as my real time. So again, the text reveals right here. It's fully on, and so I'm going to set a keyframe with this little diamond over here. It's going to basically pin that right there. And I'm going to extend, let's back out a little bit here with the minus key. I'm going to extend this little reveal. And so what we're looking at is you have it start, you have this keyframe set in real time of where it actually, sort of like a marker of where it is fully revealed. And then from this point on, we don't really want this one anymore because that's our endpoint. So I'm just going to delete that. And so now nothing's going to happen from here on. So it's just revealing on. Okay. And so I'm going to maybe come down here to maybe 4 or 5 seconds. And this is where I want it to basically reverse and go away. So I'm going to basically I'm going to copy this keyframe and I'm going to paste it down here. So I'm just going to click and highlight that. I'm going to copy and paste with Control C and V. And I'm going to move my playhead down. And now I'm going to basically take this one and put it down here. So I'm almost going, it's going forward. And then these keyframes are controlling the time. So it's saying, all right, at this point right here, I basically want to go back to the original keyframe in time, which would just be like 0. And so it's going to reverse that backwards, just like that. Okay. Let's say, well, I don't want it to go backwards. I want it to constantly go left to right, revealing and hiding it. So what I would do there is let's just take this time remapping off for a second. And what I'm going to do is take that grunge reveal layer that I have here, and I'm going to put this into a new composition. Okay, so now I have my one layer here that goes on. Let's go ahead and rotate this around so that we are going from left to right. Okay, and I need to get a little bit more time here, so I'm just going to go to composition settings, and let's make this maybe last for 22 seconds. I'm going to hit OK. And now if I zoom out with the minus key, I get some more time to play with. All right, so at this point, I want to take this, I want to duplicate it, and I'm going to slide this down. So from here, I want to add an invert layer or invert effect to this layer. So I'm going to go up to Effect, and we'll go to Channel and Invert. And so now everything that was white is black and vice versa. So here's our first layer going from white to black, and then this layer is going to pick up right here, and it's going to go from black to white. So maybe I want to extend this out here, and it's all black. Let me put this right there at the end. Okay, just like that. So if you need some more time in between, this is where that time remapping could come in handy. Or you could right click here, do a time remap, And we could extend this end out and maybe move this down. So all of this section here is just going to be blank. It's just going to be black. So it reveals on. You have a nice long section of black, and then it reveals out. Okay. You may want to time remap this end as well. And so now your front end is all white, and your front end is white, then it's black in the middle, and then white again. Okay. So that is all set up. Let's go back to the text reveal, and we can delete this layer here. We don't need that anymore. We're going to go back to the project. We're going to take the pre-comp instead of the actual footage. We're going to take the pre-comp, and I'm going to drag it and drop it down here. And now this text layer still has that Luma matte inverted attached to it. And the one thing we need to do is turn off our matte layer. Okay, so we have no text, and now it reveals on. It's going to hang out for a while, and it's going to reveal off. Just like that. So you could time remap this one if you wanted to get your timing just right, or you can say, I want it to last a little bit longer, maybe 5 seconds here. So if I double click on the matte layer that we made, I may want to drag this down here and extend that little black section so it's all black, and then at 5 seconds it's going to reveal off. If we go back to text reveal, you can see that it takes it off right there. And so whatever is inside of that video will be what your text actually does. So if I go to in here and I want to maybe soften that up, I could add an adjustment layer. So I'm going to add a blur. So we'll go to effect and blur, and we'll do maybe a fast box blur just for kicks here, and we'll maybe make it kind of blurry and go here, and now it blurs up that text. It's not really going to look that good, but you get the idea. So whatever happens inside of this is what happens inside of that for your text layer. So that about does it for how to make some text reveals inside of After Effects. So again, this is sort of the basics of it. There are a billion other ways that you could do some sort of text reveal with various effects and things, but this at least gets you started. So again, really use that, this is where you can get kind of tripped up, not really remembering the order. Just remember that what you want to reveal is on the bottom, and what you're using to reveal it with is on the top. You want to use that Luma matte or Luma matte alpha. It doesn't, it just flops the colors here. So it's really based on whatever your actual matte layer is. Now the other one, just for a quick little pointer, is the alpha matte option. That is just so Luma matte is basically going to use the black and white values of an image. So you need something to be fully black and fully white for that to really work. And then the alpha matte is going to use an alpha layer. So for instance, if I was in here and this was, let me just delete all of this, don't need that anymore. If this was, right now this is an empty layer. So, if I drew some sort of shape in here, like a square, it doesn't matter what color this is, it's going to say whatever is not transparent will be what reveals the text, and whatever is transparent is what reveals, what hides the text. So if I were to, move this mask around, for instance, if I hit P on the keyboard just as a position, and we'll move down here and I'll slide it across the screen. And so now we have this square moving across the screen. So that's going to reveal that text. So if I go to text reveal, oops, I need to hide it. There we go. Let's hide that. And I need to change it to alpha matte. So it's going to slide it by. So that text is just kind of like moving, that big box is moving back through there. And the other option is the alpha matte, or inverted, which will do the opposite. All right, so that's sort of what that one is for there. So I think that about covers it. Nothing too fancy, but you can really, if you start stacking these things on top of each other and doing some really cool stuff, you can create some really neat text reveals. So I hope that helps, and we will see you in the next one.